thoughts there, Nick, so far before we get started? I'm kind of nervous right now.
Oh, hey, let's just talk like we did a couple days ago,
All right, go
okay?
ahead.
Like there's nobody watching. It's just you and I. And it is very special for me to be here, Shawn. And you have done such amazing things over the last few years. It's been fun to see your growth. And yeah, you're way more popular than I am with all this stuff. And you have figured out how to be unique. So it's a great thing. And I'm happy to just go back and forth. I got to be careful, though. I want to make sure you know I'm going to be asking you just as many questions as you're asking me. I want this to be a back and forth. Okay. You got my promise on that?
Yeah, I can handle that. I know your
Okay.
style. I know you well enough, so I'm pretty
Okay.
prepared. So,
Good.
no, I appreciate that. Thanks. And
Yeah.
let me just start with, because I think it's important. I think a lot of the viewers know your story to some degree, but a lot of people might be new. They picked up on Nick Zentner during COVID, and there's a history that goes back so much further than that. So let's
Hmm.
see if I can pull up the fun little slideshow and also keep our heads on the screen at the same time. Um,
Boy.
yeah, so does that, let's see,
Woo.
there we go. Okay, so can everyone see? You can see Nick and I, and you can see the slides there. Is that working?
Yes,
Okay,
we can
sweet.
see that.
Okay, great. So I want to go back to you come to Central Washington University early in your career. Maybe it was, I think it was in the 90s, something like
Hmm.
that. Maybe walk us through like kind of your approach, what was your job description? What were you asked to do as a new faculty member at Central Washington?
Well, let's see. I'll make it brief. I begged my way into the geology department here. There was no job. And actually, you know what? Can we do Cochise? Can you stop your share for just a second,
Yeah,
Shawn?
for sure. Oh, Cochise. I forgot
That's
that.
that was my safe word with Jerome to get him off the share thing for just a second.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I am serious. So even to answer that question,
Right.
maybe I'll talk about very early stages, and then I want to hear your version as well, and then we can
Okay.
go back to those slides if you want.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a guest here. I want to do what you want to do, but at the same time, I want to go back and forth.
You have
Um,
full reign to hijack the show and take it in a
okay,
different direction if you want to. So,
not what I want to do, but yeah, I. So you're asking, what were the expectations when I first came to Ellensburg, Washington, Central Washington University? There was no job. I wrote letters to every university and every community college in the Pacific Northwest in the spring of 1992. My first teaching job was in Southern Ohio. I was newly married. We had our first child, and we both had good jobs in Oxford, Ohio. I taught at Miami University, and my wife taught at the local high school. But we missed the mountains, and we knew we wanted to get back out west. She's from Pocatello. And so we told our bosses we're leaving in the summer of 1992, and they thought we were playing hardball, but we weren't. We wanted to leave. And so this is before the internet. So I'm writing letters to all these schools, and I only heard back from two schools. Central Washington University saying, "Oh yeah," because I recorded myself teaching in the classroom. I hired somebody to bring in one of those huge cameras in the back of the room in 1992, and I made VHS tapes, and I sent a VHS tape of me teaching to each of these schools. Didn't hear from anybody except Central Washington University and College of Southern Idaho in Twin Falls, Idaho. Have
what?
you heard of have you
Oh
heard
my
of that
gosh,
school?
I did not know this part of the story. That is crazy. Well, first of all, that's bold to be like, hey, you don't have a position open. There's nothing listed, but you want me, and I'm going to tell you and show you why you want me. That's crazy.
Well, yeah, I stopped at a master's degree. I knew that I did not want to continue and get a PhD for reasons we can get into because I think you have a similar story. But I had an idea that I could serve a role in a department, but it wasn't the traditional role. So I got into geology. I love geology. I love the Pacific Northwest, but I did not love the tenure track research, publish or perish. I knew that wasn't my
Yeah.
my scene. How about you? How did you get into geology, and why did you stop at a master's degree?
I think this is great because we haven't had this conversation, so everyone's getting to share this with us in real time. But I think we do have a lot of crossover. So I mean, I went to college, didn't know what I wanted to be, wandered into a geology class third year, physical geology 101, and thought, this is great. I like it. And I took another and another, and then it snowballed. Was finishing my bachelor's degree at Weber State, and a professor said, well, what are you going to do now? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I was newly married, no kids yet, but like, I don't know how you take this knowledge and turn it into something that pays the bills. And he said, well, have you thought about grad school? And so I said, no, talk to me. And he explained it. And I just loved learning. So it sounded like a good path. And so we went to Northern Arizona University. I worked with Paul Umhofer. Um, and then got out of there and spent 2 months unemployed with a pregnant wife in Salt Lake City. She had a great job with the bank, and I could not get a job, and forced my way into. There wasn't a position either. My first job was in industry, working doing groundwater work for a consulting company. And I didn't know
Huh.
anything about groundwater. I didn't take any water classes, but I was a structural geologist. And the guy was like, I need a structural geologist because I can teach you water. I can't teach structural geology to a hydrogeologist.
Right?
Um, but I think I was in the same boat as you in that I saw my professors in grad school, and I saw the rigors and the world that they lived in, and I thought, I don't really want that world for myself. A lot of them, just to be kind of blunt, not at home a lot, divorced, or not what I would call a productive home life because they had all the pressure of writing grants, supervising students, generating papers, the publish or perish model, like you said. So while I still wanted to learn and I thought about a PhD, I thought I didn't really want to end up like them per se. So I
Mm-hmm.
came to teaching later. Then I was in the consulting job. By this point, we had our daughter. And then I started teaching part time at Salt Lake Community College in the evenings, mainly to make a little bit extra money. And the first week, I'm like, this is what I want to do. Like, I don't want to be at the consulting company anymore. I got to figure out how to make this work. So taught another semester there, 2 years with the consulting company and teaching part time. Then started sending out resumes, but I looked for openings. I wasn't like you. I wasn't like, I'm just sending, I was like, oh, I got to wait for someone to have an opening to get a job.
Yeah.
And anyway, got a job in Southern California in the middle of the desert, an awful place, for 2 years. That was my first full-time teaching gig, and then came here to CSI. So,
Wow. Okay. So, all right. Well, let's close the loop on the CSI thing then.
yeah,
So
yeah, I want to hear that.
it was must have been July of 1992. We say goodbye to our friends in Ohio. We rent a moving van. My parents drive down to meet us at a rest area in Southern Illinois to help us make this big trip out west. Got the baby, got the car, got everything in our worldly possessions in the back of that thing. We get to Pocatello, my wife's family. We unload the truck. This is like mid-July 1992. My
Right.
first call is to College of Southern Idaho, to this guy that I had been exchanging letters with and phone calls with. And my memory is he was half-time geography, half-time geology. It was a combined thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, okay, I can't remember the guy's name. I should have looked that up to prepare for this.
If I said it,
And I
would you
said,
know it?
maybe.
Marvin Strope?
Yep, that's it.
Yep. Yeah.
That's it. So Marvin said, well, I was impressed with that VHS tape. I even got it to work in my VCR, and I watched the whole thing. And I'm talking to my people here at the university. We need you here at College of Southern Idaho. And so he's, pumping me up. And I make that call on Monday morning. We arrived on a weekend in Pocatello. That call on Monday morning, I'll never forget the phone call. And I said, Marvin, I'm in your state now. I'm ready to come over and visit. He said, I got bad news for you. We've decided to go with a geography applicant instead of a geology person. I thought we had it cinched, but we don't. And so I'm curious.
I know exactly where this goes, but go ahead. Like, go
No,
ahead.
no, you,
No, no,
you.
no. I want to hear what you're going to say. I interrupted. Like, I want to hear what you're going to say first.
No, I was like, hung up the phone and I'm like, what are we going to do? We're out here. My parents were right. They said we were crazy to leave those 2 full-time jobs in Ohio. I'm living in your parents' basement with a crying baby. What the hell are we going to do?
Yeah, that is a
And
crazy
so
story.
and so I came up here to Ellensburg, which was the only other opportunity, and just begged to like get a half-time job to teach some intro labs. And she's like, "You've got a master's. I'm not going to hire you." This is Megan Miller and Charlie Rubin, who just showed up, and they had grand plans to build a program here. There was hardly anything going on. And she said, I can't, with good conscience, hire a guy for $12,000 for the first year. I have no benefits for you. I have nothing. I'm like, I'll take it.
Yeah, I need
So
something.
we showed up, and one thing led to another, and it all turned out happily ever after. But who took that job in 1992, and when did you show up? What year did you show up?
So I showed up, I came here in 2004, and my predecessor was a lady named Nancy Johnson Byler. She was a geographer mainly, but she taught enough geology to make it work. And she apparently, I never knew when she came. I knew she came in the 90s, but that fills the gap right there. So
That's
that's a
it.
crazy story. So they must have already, and she was a great educator, but they must have already offered it to her, and you were kind of like the backup or something, or that's
It was like many of those things. It was handled kind of awkwardly, and I don't really remember if there was even an interview scheduled or anything. Like nothing,
yeah,
I came out. There was no. It was kind of almost like a handshake, wink, wink thing.
right.
Like, yeah, we'll take care of you if you can just get out here. But yeah, so they
Yeah,
went with her,
different
and that's
times,
great.
right. That's
Yeah, that's
crazy.
right.
I never knew that. That was, if we don't do anything else today, there's a nice little nugget that I just
Okay.
got, was just the Nick Zentner CSI connection. So
Yeah.
that's crazy. Well, it worked out well for me because Nancy was older than you would have been in 1992. And I wouldn't be here if you had filled that in, because you'd still be here, and I'd be somewhere else. So it's crazy how these things all work out.
That's right.
That's incredible. So you came there then as an adjunct or full time, and like what responsibilities were you given initially with that first year or two?
Well, to answer that, let's go back for just a sec. So I gave a talk, my first talk at a GSA meeting in Spokane in 1989, and they're holding it in Spokane for the
Yeah,
first time since then.
right.
So that's a long time ago. So that was an important meeting for me because Bill Hart from Miami University came up after my little 15-minute talk and said, "We're looking for an adjunct person to be a lecturer." And I'm like, "I don't even know what an adjunct is. What is that?" He says, "Well, we pay you a little bit of money to
Yeah.
basically teach all of our classes because we got research we want to do." That was a new concept for me in the late 80s. And so my job at Miami in Ohio was to attract majors to the program. And I had 400 students every semester, 8 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I had all sorts of practice. I was just an apprentice, essentially. I
And
taught a
you're
little bit.
and you're like late 20s at this point? Like where?
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
you're okay.
yeah. 27. And I was such a poor student as an undergrad and a grad student that I didn't have a TA as a graduate student in Pocatello. So everybody else was talking about TAing in the labs and things. I'm like, well, I'm just barely here kind of a thing. So I had very limited teaching experience. But like you, as soon as I started, I knew right away that I should be doing this.
So
Like it just felt as
you were kind of rudderless too until that first, like, hey, I like geology, this is good stuff, but I don't know where this is going to go. But then you had that first teaching experience, and that kind of like set you on that path. Is that fair?
It is fair. I had no, and I tell this to my students now, like they're all worried about what their job is going to be. And I'm like, look, man, I got a master's degree in geology. I had no idea what I was going to do with it. Most of my people in the late 80s, all my buddies, all went off to
Oil and gas, yeah.
Elko, Nevada, and Carlin was hiring or whatever. The price of gold was really high. And I'm like, I'm not going to live in a trailer. I had no idea. I could not visualize anything. But once I discovered that classroom, and I don't know, it's just like, it sounds like you had the same moment. You just start and you're like, this isn't easy, but it feels natural. And it
Yeah.
feels just like I should be doing
It's
this. And
finding a
so,
niche. Yeah.
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 So I had three solid years in Ohio just going full bore, practicing, repetition, 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 tweaking, tweaking. And I was able to build a number of students. So there was, a lot of majors by the time I left there, and the people there were very impressed by that. And so that was really the way that I sold myself to Central Washington. I said, if you
Yeah.
hire me, even as a half-time person, I can be the Pied Piper for you. I can get students, and we can get majors, and then you can, if they basically saw that. If I could do my job and bring a bunch of students in, then they could add a new professor and another new
Yeah. If the
professor, and
department
then develop.
grows, right. So you were the Kool-Aid salesman. Like, hey, students, come try this Kool-Aid. It's really good. And giving
Pretty
them that
much.
first taste.
And that
Interesting.
was the first 10 years of my career. It was just nothing but I have to justify my job by attracting students and getting them beyond that. Basically, if I can get them into my 101 classroom and I take them on a couple field trips or maybe teach a field course down in California or do a spring break trip in desert Southwest or whatever, I was doing a lot of that, then I can justify me being here. And my parents, up until recently, have always been worried that I'm not going to be able to keep a job. If I don't have a PhD at a university, they're going to get rid of you. You're going to be expendable. You're not protected. And I'm like, it's working. I,
Yeah.
I think we're okay.
I
So,
mean, I would echo what you said in that as we advise young people, that's the thing I try to reiterate as well, is that just go for it. Like don't
yeah,
you can't think 6 steps ahead to what this is going to look like in 20 years. Like young Nick had no idea probably he was even going to stay at Central Washington. You probably thought it was a stepping stone and I'll stick somewhere else, but you certainly didn't think you'd end up where you are today. So you can't think that far ahead. You just need to like have a passion and follow it and see where it takes you.
it's an important lesson. And yes, I advise most of our students and have for a long, long time. And there's generally two types of students. So they become majors, in other words. So then
Right.
they're sitting right here in this chair. And some of them they say, I'm going to do all this work in geology. Great. But I need a goal. You give me a carrot that I'm going to work for. I'm going to bust my ass to get that job. And some are only going to commit themselves if they can see that job. Or maybe it's the
Right.
parents that say, I don't think I really know what geology is. It doesn't sound like a good choice. But if you can convince me that you can get a job in greater Seattle making some money and driving rush hour traffic, then I'll sign off on this. So
Right.
some want that motivation. But for the most, I try to convince them just what you said, Shawn. This geology stuff is fun if you're comfortable being outdoors and you're naturally curious and you're not afraid of science. Then you just have to have faith that there's going to be some doors opened for you by people that you meet. You just have to be open to opportunities, but you don't have to stress over the specific job. You just have
Yeah.
to bet on yourself. That's it. Just bet
Yeah.
on yourself and work hard and be open to opportunities. So it's like sales, really, but it's all within the world of geology.
So did they give you so you're adjunct, but then eventually is it lecturer or there's a title or you probably didn't even care at that point because you're just trying to like keep the baby fed and the wife happy and like, but like where, and then maybe also speak to, and I know where I kind of know the answer to this, but I think it'd be good for the viewers to hear.
Yeah,
The one big difference between you and I is you are at a university. Your program now has a bachelor's, not just a bachelor's degree, but also a master's degree.
right.
Whereas I'm at a 2 year college that ends at an associate's degree.
Yeah,
I'm the only you're looking at the CSI geology department right now,
right.
whereas you have lots of colleagues. Maybe speak to how that dynamic, because I've never experienced that. Like how does that work? And did you always feel, and do you still feel like you're second class? There's the PhD, big shot research people walking around in your imposter syndrome. Like maybe speak a little bit to that because I'm interested in hearing that.
All right. Well, we can go a bunch of different directions with that. We can go dark, or we can stay nice and perky and happy. Whatever you want to do, Shawn. I'll try to answer it, and we'll just go back and forth. Yes,
I'd like some dark, just a little.
Okay. All right. We'll put a couple sprinkles in.
Yeah.
Um, Especially back then in the 90s, departments didn't have an outreach person or a person who was talking to the masses and then also talking to introductory geology students. It just wasn't a thing. And most people in academia play by the rules. There's very specific, rigid rules that have been in existence for 100 years or more. And so at a university with a geology department, and again, when I showed up here 30 plus years ago, there were 3 gentlemen about to retire, and there was this young power couple that showed up from high-powered places like Stanford and Caltech and Arizona and places that are way above my world. And they showed up here in rural Washington and built this program step by step. Again, I had a role, but after 2 years of being an adjunct for quarter to quarter and paid very, very low wages, and yeah, at the time I was hanging bulletin boards and helping people haul their rocks down the hallway, and it was just basically, I was basic glorified custodian, essentially. After 2 years, I had a conversation with our department chair, and she was very good at making things happen. And I said, well, I've been here 2 years. Liz and I want to be here full time. We have already decided this is our place. This is not a stepping stone. We've already dug our roots in deeply with social and other things. And I don't want to leave, but I can't go on with this adjunct thing. So she made it happen and figured out how to get me a state job, which was a scientific instructional technician, just bland state job. But we knew that I was going to be doing all these weird things that didn't fit the actual job description. But she did me a great service by doing that. So there was stability there, and I could count on a salary every year. And unless there was something unforeseen economically or something else, I'd be fine. And as long as, again, if I brought the students in, I'd be fine. So that's the answer to that. And I've essentially been with that role for my whole career. There was a job title change 5 years ago, but it's still
the responsibilities are the same for the most part, and you have
the
your
most part.
teaching load and your expectations. So the public outreach component is not really in there. They want you to teach a lot of the introductory classes. That's the gateway drug, right? That gets people in. They want you to be a huge advocate for the program, almost a recruiter, if you will, in getting those people into the classes, but also going from the 101 classes to like, okay, now they want to be majors, because that's justifying your colleagues, right? If no one's majoring in geology, you just need me and you there teaching 101 for the gen eds, right? So, does that sound accurate?
It sounds accurate. And so here's the dark portion, just briefly. We'll just touch on it. You can be very good at your job, but if it's an unusual job, it's often overlooked. And so the way I describe it is most everybody here, and really in the ivory towers around the world, they're playing one board game. They're all reading the box top and reading those rules over and over and over again. And how do I go from assistant professor to associate professor? And how do I do this? And how do I do that? And all of their attention is on that board game, and it's totally appropriate. That's what the job is, that all their peers, all their friends are in that world, and that's great. But I wrote my own board game.
Sure you did.
And it involves all this other stuff. And so it's unreasonable for me to have people over there at that card table playing that board game to even look up and see what's going on over at my kiddie table over there. So when it does happen, and Basil Tikoff or others who are deep into the regular job and the regular world and the tenure track world, and yet they can also see what guys like you and I are doing, it's especially meaningful. So I have favorite geologists who I have on these broadcasts, and they're good. But to be totally honest, another reason I keep inviting them back is because they actually watch what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and they value it. And so it's that's not too dark, is it? It's just
No,
like
that's not dark at
the
all. That's I totally see what you're saying. I mean, the your colleagues are so focused on their career path, which has these stepping stones that are laid out before them, and they knew that. They've known that since they were in grad school.
right,
That's the game they're playing. You were kind of given this loosey goosey, enigmatic role, and you're
right,
grateful for it. But
yes.
there's no carrots in front of you. There's no stepping stones. So to make yourself grow and challenge yourself, you've just kind of made up these other things because you're teaching 101. So when did you really feel like leaving the classroom and just serving the
Mhm.
students and like, okay, now I know there's a market for this beyond this? Is it people bringing rocks into you and saying, is this a meteorite? Is this what? Because we all get that. But where did that happen, or how did that evolve when you're like, oh wow, there's all these people in rural Washington and maybe beyond that are interested in geology, and here's a method I can take that to them.
Uh, Pretty much as soon as I arrived in the early 90s, I was surprised at how much interest there was among local folks in geology. Phone calls ringing, people coming in off the street. Is this a meteorite? Is this a dinosaur bone? You get it as well.
Yeah.
So I knew there was an audience there, and it was a malnourished audience. And again, this is before the internet. So everybody's waiting for the next month's National Geographic to see if there's maybe an article on Cascade volcanoes or something, or maybe a Nova special, and you're waiting a year and a half for this thing to show up for a half an hour, and then it's gone. So, I knew there was an audience, and it was a malnourished audience, and they were wanting more. They didn't hear it in school. We don't teach geology much in this country, K through 12. And so outside of a Geology 101 classroom, there just weren't that many opportunities. So from my point of view, and I'm curious about your point of view, the audience was there, but it was totally turned on by the internet. The fact that the internet opened this whole world, and it wasn't immediate, but some could see the potential in using the internet to share detailed stories, geologic stories about their area, and especially out here in the West. And so I knew that was there.
Right.
And I'm not a business person. In fact, I'm afraid of money and that getting in the way. But I knew that if I put some energy into that, it would work. And even though I'm at a university, I do view my role as pretty much the same role as you. I do feel pretty isolated and pretty solitary most of the time. Um, do you wish that you had colleagues there, or did you ever think that your job would be a stepping stone and you would go on to a bigger place, or what's your take on this part of the story?
I mean, in terms of colleagues, it's yes and no. Like the autonomy is great. Like I want to use this textbook. There's no committee meeting. I just decide it, right? Or here's what we're going to do. Like, geology department meetings are me and myself and I. And so those are things get done. But are there times I wish, I could walk out in the hall and be like, share excitement or things that are
Right.
happening, like this Iceland thing. And I've got 5 chemists down the hall and a physicist. And I mean, we connect, we're nice to each other, but the connections aren't there. And so I
Yes.
think it's yes and no. Like I wish there were colleagues to share geology with, and I miss like that grad school camaraderie where you're just kind of like
Yeah.
deep in the trenches every day
Yes.
talking about it. But in the end, it's really refreshing and nice to be and flattering to be like the guy. Like, I'm the only geologist most people know in the Twin Falls area, and so to be the quote unquote expert in your little tiny neck of the woods is neat, and the little local paper wants to talk to you. I mean, so it's the same thing, and I think I got into the outreach similar to you. You get invited by the Kiwanis Club or the
Right.
Rotary or whatever to do a thing. And those are always fun. And I'm always like, wow, these people, if only my students would have like
Yeah.
the passion
Yeah.
for this and the appetite that these people do. And so, I mean, I probably have a similar story to you where it kind of went from one thing to the next and, writing books, mountain press books and whatever, and just looking for like, and then YouTube, right? And then YouTube's like the big platform.
Well, yes, we are very similar in that respect. And I think I'm realizing right now, I've shared some of this backstory about the university setting and me not being playing the same board game. Because if I'm totally blunt, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, Shawn, but I like getting immediate reaction from people who appreciate what I'm doing.
Yep.
It's selfish. It's not some sort of higher goal of I should really spread the word and educate. That's too pretentious. I'm doing it for me, man. And as long as I feel like I have a community that I can communicate with, that's it for me. That drives everything that I'm doing outside of the classroom. And it boils down to just simply wanting that connection. And obviously, this kind of a setup is what do we have? More than 1,000 people probably watching. Yeah, 1,300 people watching from around the world. Like, I never get over that. And it
Yeah.
feels good. And I'm guessing you have the same core motor for what you're doing, right?
I mean, yeah, it's no different than when you're in the classroom and you know the moment when it happens where you're like the students are locked in, something special is taking place, and you get I call it the warm fuzzies, right? You get the warm fuzzy on the inside. They don't pay us that great, but you and I don't deal in K-12 education. We don't have to deal with parents and discipline. Your
Right.
wife works at a school. My wife works in a school as a counselor.
Oh, yeah.
I hear the stories and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is not the world. I would last 3 minutes there max.
Exactly.
But yeah, and so I think it is a little selfish because you realize it's the instant appreciation. People are enjoying and that's all of us want, right? We want to be valued. We want whatever we share in life to be appreciated and make a difference with people. And so when you start hearing, whether it's the emails, the comments, or whatever, how much you're helping someone understand their area or look at a road cut differently or whatever, it's incredibly like powerful, and it makes a big difference, and it keeps you in the game. Like you put out way more stuff than I do. Like I'm like, where does this guy get the energy? But I know the answer to that question. Part of the energy comes from when you do it. That's the fuel that you need for the next time. Because
Yes.
when you're getting ready to do it, you're like, oh boy. Liz is like, where are you going today, Nick? I got to do another live stream, and maybe you're not dragging your feet like that. I'm probably reading into it too much, but when you get in the moment and you see the comments and stuff, it's rewarding at that point, knowing you're making a difference.
It is rewarding. And I think there's a couple other things that work. I'm curious what you have to say about it. I know that a bunch of the people right here with us right now are fans of geology. That's
Right.
obvious. But I think it's maybe more than that. I mean, it's been 4 years that I've been dealing with this live stream business, and it started during COVID. And I'm still trying to totally understand what's going on. But I think in addition to geology, I think people just want to be in a positive
Space.
environment,
Yeah.
and they're proud of themselves. I'm speaking for you now, viewers. You can tell me if I'm way off. You're proud of yourself for selecting to be in a place like this as opposed to other places that are less satisfying or less healthy or less whatever, less positive. So I lean into the really corny stuff about I love you, Shawn, and all this, I never used to talk like that, but the pandemic was such an odd time, and we were all kind of extra emotional, at least I was, and trying to navigate all these weird things that were going on. And I've hung on to a lot of that because this community thing is undervalued in science. I mean, we're trained to be science people. We're not trained to understand anything really about psychology and sociology, but uh, just like teaching long ago. If you have reps like you have by now, you know who your audience is. You continue to tweak, but it's building a genuine, authentic community with respect, as opposed to listen up, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm the expert. Get your notes pads ready to go. I'm going to preach to you about what you don't know. That's not the way to do it. And you don't do it. And that's why you're so popular.
No, I agree. It can't be top down. Um, I mean, I'll just echo everything you just said. Like, and I've seen it in the classrooms too. And I think COVID was definitely a speed bump, especially with the younger, the kids we're teaching, the college age students. I start my class the first day. If it's good weather, we go outside and stand in a circle. Let's get out of the rows and columns that the classroom structure demands, and let's just introductions around the room. A fun fact: on my first test, I have students. I say there's a bonus question. Write down 6 students' name in this classroom beside yourself. On the second test, I say, give me 4 students' names and tell me something about them that's not a physical attribute. So you can't say Jimmy has red hair and Susie sits in the front row. You got to say, oh, Billy's on the basketball team and Nancy likes horses or whatever. And like, I found that just getting them to like break down those barriers. My wife has a social work degree, so I told, as much as the more I'm in this game, and I think you'll agree with this, I'm teaching geology. The science is important. I'm not diminishing that, but we're just trying to build like people and young
Yeah.
people, especially into like citizens having better communication skills, like getting to know each other. Just I'm teaching very basic, probably kindergarten lessons in some ways that have slipped through the cracks a little bit. It's
Yeah.
life coaching now, right?
It is. Yeah. That's an added part of it. But you're talking about your effectiveness by being able to deal with a lot of different kinds of people. These are kids from different kinds of families. I know they're all from Twin or whatever, but like, yeah, with practice, and you weren't trained. You didn't get an education degree. I didn't get an
Yeah.
education degree. And so we have just learned by repetition how to be effective with lots of different kinds of people. And I'm willing to bet that that's one of the appeals for our uh, public outreach, that you're good at what you do. You have the science, but it's more than just the science. It's connecting, it's navigating all these different questions and different kinds of things. And people just like that. I'll say one more thing that will get me all emotional, but I'm going to say it anyway. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm just role modeling, or I'm just trying to emulate my parents. My parents were both public school teachers in this small town in Wisconsin. They were both coaches. They were well known in the community. And every time I went to the grocery store with one of them as a kid, it would be like forever until they were done with all these conversations with each person. But both of my parents were excellent listeners. They gave everyone plenty of attention, listening carefully, and they were valued mostly because of that, I think. It wasn't really they were a great coach or something else. They just were consistent, and they were caring, humble people. And I think that's ultimately what is making some of this stuff popular. People want a real person, a genuine person, a human being, and the geology is just
Icing on the
a
cake.
bonus.
Yeah.
I think it is. I don't know
Yeah.
how you feel, but
No.
to me, it's way bigger than geology. I think, especially this live stuff, for sure.
Yeah. No, and thanks for sharing that about your parents. I think it sounds like they were people, they were a people person, right? Like they, whether they were extroverts or introverts or whatever, they cared about people, they communicated with people, and they didn't take themselves too seriously. I mean, I think
Right.
that's part of it is of what you and I both do is like, I'm not the expert. I'm looking at the Iceland data and I'm trying to figure it out. And I want to learn. So I learn just as much from my students or my viewers, and I know you do too, as they do from me. And it's just, I think, taking that facade down. And maybe, I don't know, had you and I got a PhD, could we still have that mindset? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, there's people out there that I think can do it, but I think it's harder. I think that the that board game teaches you to emphasize certain skills.
Okay, you got me going. We're going to go another, and we can cut this off and go to your viewers anytime you want.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go dark again real quick. Okay, do I have permission?
Yeah, go dark, and I'll say coaches if you're going too dark.
Higher education is a cult. The
Yeah.
deeper you go into the cult, the more it's tough to get out, the harder it is to get out. And once you're in that cult and in the world of PhDs, you're only listening to people in the cult. And the worst part is, from my point of view, everything in your life is cult members. You don't intersect with the mechanic or the cook or the coach. I never see you at the JV football game. I never see you anywhere in town. What are you doing? You're in the cult. You're in this ivory tower.
Right.
And so if you decide that you're going to be a public outreach person just at the snap of a finger, oh yeah, I see what Shawn Willsey's doing. I'm a PhD person. I can do better than that. I'm going to start a YouTube channel. It's not going to work, man, because you don't have any experience with anybody except your own. You married somebody within the whole thing. And so I feel like I've got one foot in the cult and one foot out of the cult. And because of my life experience with lots of different communities, it works.
Right.
And people that are so deep into that world, they just can't see it. They don't see the value in this. Blah blah blah.
No,
Cutting
good.
myself off now.
No, I'm gonna come. This is a perfect segue because I
There you
found
go.
I found a cool little graphic that I wanna share real quick. So let me pull this up because this is exactly. So blah blah blah. I was gonna show all sorts of I know stuff, but this is all good. I'm happy with where we're at and where we're going. I was gonna do Nick Zentner. This is your life.
Go ahead.
But that's
Go
okay.
ahead.
Well, no, like you came to the college, you did all these great things. I don't think you really want to talk about these, but there's a fun progression here of what you did. You did the 2-minute geologies. I mean, it's kind of cool. It's been cool for me to look this past week in preparation for this at your evolution and the things you just latched onto, whether it was the public TV channel, the PBS shows, and I don't think you necessarily sought these out. I think these came to you. The podcast, your ability to go interview people, and you're interviewing the professional geologists and the researchers. That's the science. That's important. But you're going to people like Randy Lewis, a Native American who gives everyone a totally different perspective. You're going to people like Chelsea McRaven Feeney, who does the graphic design and actually tells the stories through her visuals in a compelling way. People like Merle Beck, who, has passed now, but people aren't going to be with us forever. And let's go capture some of what they can share in the moment. So I'm kind of just catching up with like all the stuff I'd prepared. The COVID thing, I think, if I was to write the story, I think that's really where you kind of hit your stride. It was a terrible time. No one knew what was going to happen, but you innovated and came up with things. And some of it was silly, and we can laugh about it now, like the cozy fort and duct taping your phone to the top of a ladder. The highlight, of course, of the whole Nick from Home thing was this moment for me when I was like, oh my gosh, there's my book. And Nick Zentner's giving me accolades. So, and then that's evolved into some of the stuff you've done more recently with, talking to Adrian, who deals with rattlesnakes. And I don't know what in your brain convinced you it was a good idea to bring 150 people out to a field trip and have them bring their chairs, but you made it work, and it's pretty impressive all the way through. So I was going to spend 10 minutes on each of those slides that we just covered quite quickly. But you and I met real quick in 2016 at Hell's Canyon. So for those of you watching, there's Nick, the tall guy in the back, and there's me, the guy with the visor on, the silly looking guy, and there's Basil Teakoff, and this is Western Idaho shear zone stuff, and so you've just been a great mentor to me. But here's the thing I wanted to get to, and this is exactly what you were speaking to. So. We've got these sort of concentric rings here, and I didn't make this. This is from Scripps Institute. But there's the scientist, right? Dealing with their science, and there's the cult-like thing you talked about. They're so insulated in their bubble that
Yes.
they can't see beyond it very well. They can see out to this bubble, the green bubble, the scientific community. They have to go to conferences, they have to publish. They might even head out into the orange bubble a little bit, and maybe they have a few connections and networks with industry. Maybe they work with the public officials, maybe the educators. But this is where I think historically we've just gone off the rails. And I think you and I see ourselves, we're here, we're in the orange bubble. So the pink circle's right next to us. And so
Mm-hmm.
we spend time there. And
Mm-hmm.
and we're mobile enough we can go back over here to the scientists, and so I think I am a geologist. You're a geologist at our core by training, by expertise. But I think if I were to look at my career in its entirety, I'm mostly here. This is who I am.
Yes.
Maybe I talked a lot there. Maybe just give us some of your perspective on any of that.
Well, thanks for doing your homework and grabbing those things. That was nice of you to do that, Shawn. Yes, looking at this, I haven't seen this graphic before, but I do like it, and I see myself in the orange as well. Uh, I think. What do I think? I don't. Okay, so here's a common question that I get, and maybe you do too. Why aren't there a bunch of you guys? How come everybody's not doing what you guys are doing? Well, it's a good question, but there's a couple main reasons that I see. One is that you have to be self-motivated. Just like we were talking, you're not typically going to get tons of people at your institution watching what you're doing because it's so different. Let me ask you right now, Shawn, you're at College of Southern Idaho. Do the people in your building watch your stuff? Does anybody at your college, are they fans of what you're doing?
Um, they're aware.
They're aware.
They're aware. Okay, I work at a great institution.
Yeah,
My college granted me a sabbatical last semester to go
yeah.
out and make more geology field videos because I use them in classes. I use them in online classes as a learning tool. So they were very
Can
supportive of that.
can we
The
do Coach East? I want to see you a little bit better,
Oh yeah,
please.
we can do that.
Thank you.
In fact, that we're done with the PowerPoints.
Okay,
It's
good.
over. So
Thank you.
yeah. I know you're not a fan of that, so. But I spent so much time preparing those PowerPoints. Doggone it, we were going to do them either way.
I appreciate it. We can go back to those if
No,
you
that's
want
all
more
I
on
had.
some
That
of
was
those
it.
slides.
We got through
Yeah,
them all. I just wanted to, yeah. So
yeah. So I think, if you don't mind,
yeah.
why do you think your efforts, specifically your YouTube channel, is so powerful, is so popular, is so tangible? Like you have really skyrocketed, at least in the last year, it seems.
Yeah.
So with all modesty aside, we're talking about how humility is an important part of this, and that's true. But just for a second, why do you think your efforts have taken on such a life of their own recently?
I think partially it's content. If I think in the case of Iceland, I have a connection to Iceland. Iceland is a place a lot of people are interested in. So I think
Yes.
content and interest is part of it. So that gets you partway there. If we're looking at some obscure Alaskan volcano, and I'm monitoring the minutia of that, no one even lives near it, no one's heard of it, probably falling on mostly deaf ears. So I think
Okay.
content's important.
Yep.
I think just your personality, just like this is me, and like if you were with me last night at a little social event with friends, or if you just come watch me be a silly dad with my kids, I try to be the same person no matter what. I don't have a lot of facades. I'm pretty much a straight shooter. I try to be honest. If I don't know something, I'll tell you. And of course, we all have ego. And I think everything I'm saying, I think holds true for you. Like, I think personality is important. I think people have to feel connected to you as a human being, regardless of what you're talking about. Um, so I don't know, just my style and my approach to explaining things, my teaching style resonates with people. I don't get bogged down in fancy terms. If we're learning a new term, let's give it some context. I think the jargon is where you lose a lot of people. Um, Yeah, I don't know. Like,
Well, let's stay with Iceland for a second.
sure.
So they can get information about Iceland from a lot of different places. So
Yes.
why are they coming to you?
I think you and I, our role is science. We're translators. You and I can read the literature. We can talk to the scientists. We can look at the data and we understand it. Our academic trainings prepare us for that. But we also, because of the board game you and I have been playing for all these years, we know how to take that and bring it to the public who is smart, who is educated, who is eager
Yeah.
to learn, but doesn't know all the buzzwords and just needs someone to take an extra 30 seconds to explain the cool graph that shows uplift, with the GPS data or whatever. And we're able to bridge that gap. I think, and I don't think it's a special ability that's the Nick Zentner, Shawn Willsey gift that you either get or you don't get. I think we've developed it. I think we recognize it because we're in those two worlds. Um, and it's something I don't know if I could have done this 20 years ago, like coming out of grad school. I think I was in the research mode and I was in grad school mode and I liked teaching and I was starting to develop those skills. But if you took young Shawn and plopped him down right now on this YouTube channel, I don't think he would do very well. I think he would be uncomfortable. I don't think he would have the ability to communicate to the public. And so I needed that time.
Why are you a trusted person then? That's a big part of, to me, that's a
Mm.
big part of it, that you are not, you don't have an agenda. You're not trying to manipulate a story for your personal gain. It does not appear. I mean, you can break news right now and say that it is all for personal gain. But but yes, you would have been uncomfortable 20 years ago, but you're making this look easy, and yet you're flying a frickin' drone at the same time, monitoring a live chat, doing these other things, and
Yeah.
you're being vulnerable. It takes balls to get on here and just do this thing live, especially with what you were doing with some of those real-time eruption things. Can you speak to that? Like just the ability to be live with all of this current stuff. That's why I think you are the go-to person. It's
Well,
live, it's current, and you are synthesizing in real time. Hardly anybody can do that. I can't do that.
Well, I think you can, and I'd like to hear your answer to this because everything you ask me, I can ask you. I don't know. It's just a genuine desire to learn. It's not taking yourself too seriously. It's being vulnerable, like you said. Yeah, I screw up. And I think that's my approach in life. Is I'm a goofball. You know, I'm I screw up every day, all the time with things, and I want to learn and I want to get better. And I'm not coming in with any sort of agenda other than I want to learn. I want people to feel respected and valued, and I want people to feel like their questions are heard, and that I give them some credence, I suppose. I don't know. What are your thoughts with that? Because it works for you as well, I think.
Well, I want to talk more about you. You're not sensationalized.
No, I'm really careful with. Things I hate about the YouTube world. Making the stupid thumbnails. And initially I did like you, and it's just like YouTube generates 3 random screenshots during the thing. You pick the one that looks okay and you throw it on there. But in order to grow the channel and like spread the geology educational love and grow the community, I feel like you have to play the game a little bit and like make the thumbnail with the title on it. But I don't want to be clickbait. I don't want to be sensationalism. And actually yesterday was a good example when I first got in the office and all the earthquakes were happening and it looked like there was going to be an eruption. I made a thumbnail with a title that suggested an eruption was very likely. Because at that point, that's exactly what it looked like. That there was no dishonesty there. But after I did the live stream and we kind of like everything kind of settled down, I thought, that wasn't really accurate. So I went back and changed it. And
Oh, wow, really?
yeah, I went back and I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. And
That says it all right there.
well, so I want people to be attracted to the videos because I think I have something to share and I think they might enjoy it, but not at the expense of like, and I hate sensationalism, and I know you do too. Just like, we can put Yellowstone in the title of a video and that'll get people there, but I don't want it to be like overhyped because I hate that. I hate that about our world. So I don't
Well, I
know.
got a quick story about that, and it might be interesting. And then again, whenever you want to go to the viewers, any questions.
Yeah, maybe in the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 5 minutes or
Sure.
so. Yeah, that would be good.
So we're kind of getting into thumbnails and sensational and growing an audience and all of that. We might have different views on this. I'm not sure, but here's my view.
Sure.
I made these when I started doing YouTube stuff specifically for YouTube. It was with a guy named Tom Foster who um, passed away suddenly 4 years ago this week. I just realized driving in here. So 4 years ago, he's been gone, but he and I made these videos. We started with a series called 2 Minute Geology, and then some of those got a little bit longer and longer. And Tom was very good with a camera and was very talented in many ways. And he did it totally on the weekends. He was not in science or ag. He was a plant manager for Twin City Foods in Pasco. So he was just a self-taught, brilliant guy, but a solitary guy and everything else. So he basically said, let's make some videos together. You're pretty good in front of a camera. I've seen some of your stuff on, the downtown lectures and all that. And here are the things I can do with a camera. And I said, oh, that sounds fun. Let's just, every Saturday, let's go out and just make some things together. It became clear very quickly that Tom wanted to make sure that his videos that we made together were very, very popular. And he was doing everything he could this is like more than 10 years ago, reading all these forums on how to make your YouTube
Yeah.
video popular. And he picked 2 Minute Geology because he said nobody's going to watch more than 2 minutes. He was just by the book and like just obsessed about numbers of views and that sort of thing. And pretty early on, I said, I don't care about view numbers, Tom. I just like making this with you. And he basically said, I don't want to do it unless it's hugely popular.
Right.
And so that we never saw eye to eye on those two things. But because of my backstory or even baggage, I guess you can say, with not getting a lot of attention in my daily job, I am wired to just enjoy doing the thing. And it really honestly does not matter to me how many subscribers or anything
Right.
else. And yes, the money thing, I just don't want to deal with that at all. And so I'm worried about burnout. And so I want to do things when I'm excited about doing them, and I don't owe anybody anything, and I can just kind of be freelancing about it. Do you, because you do deal with money a little bit,
Yeah.
are you hoping to continue? Do you pay attention to views or, it's
Yeah.
totally fine.
No, no,
I'm the weird
no,
one.
no, let's be honest. And I totally respect that about you. And you and I haven't had this conversation before about like
Right.
the YouTube world and the finances of it or whatever. Early on my channel was just getting started and it was just kind of a fun thing to do. 2020, I was starting to do these field-based videos, and I'm like, this could be good. This is something, because at the time you didn't have a lot of those, so I thought this is something different than what Nick's doing. Nick has lectures. He has his 2 Minute Geology ones, and some of those are in the field. But I'm going to go to all these other places. And Nick is also very much Pacific Northwest focused. And I thought, well, I don't know Pacific Northwest geology that well, at least that area. I'm going to go look at all these other places. I'm going to go take people to outcrops and in the field. And so early on, it was growing very slowly, but I saw that once you got to 1,000 subscribers, you could monetize your channel. And it was just a goal. It was like, that would be cool just to like, not to get to the money, but like as just a fun goal, like, can I get to 1,000 subscribers? That would be, and I remember having like 100 and thinking like, oh my gosh, 100 people actually care about what I'm doing.
Right.
And so, I got to the 1,000 and I thought I had to have like a long, hard look in the mirror about, okay, like, what are you going to do now? What's your goal? And I thought, well, One thing I don't want to do is I absolutely hate watching a YouTube video and halfway through it, an ad comes on. Like,
Yeah.
I still to this day, it just, if I'm showing one to students, like, oh, we have to sit here for 5 seconds, students, just bear with me. So, even though I chose to monetize the videos, I disabled that function. So, on my videos, there's no mid roll ad that comes up. But ultimately, I decided, yeah, like these are taking time. I have to leave the family to go do these. It's effort required on my part, and we sort of live in a world where if I want to read National Geographic, you pay a subscription. If I want to watch Netflix shows, you pay a subscription. YouTube subscriptions are free, but it was a way for me to generate a little bit of extra revenue to go to these places to like actually
Yeah.
fund it. And so for me, it's like not necessarily like trying to make the money. I think if you're in it for the money, you're going to burn out. If you're in it
Yes.
and if you're just in it, if you're always thinking about the next video and I got to put something up today, you're going to burn out. Lately, I've had a lot of content because of the
You
Iceland thing.
have.
Well, it's
You
Iceland.
have.
It's Iceland and people, and then not just feeling obligated to give people quote unquote what they want, but me wanting to do it. I'm going to go look at the data anyway because I'm curious.
Right.
I'm going to go see what's happening in Iceland.
Yeah.
And so it's not much extra work to just share that with people. And now I've got a community like you do, and they want to know and they want to hear my take on things, and I want to hear their take on things. And so I think I've hit a pretty happy medium, but it's not the driver. Is it giving my family and I a little bit of extra income that we haven't had? Yes, and that's nice. Like, and teaching, as you know, doesn't. It's lean. I mean, there were years the Willsey family was like, here it is, and we've got one vacation this year,
Right.
and who's collecting? Let's get the coupons cut out of the newspaper because we're going, and I don't want to
Yeah.
get too deep into this, but yeah, but it is nice, and to have that little bit of extra, and then to be able to help Amanda Joe and other people with the people helping me out as well. I've got Chelsea working on like some logos and some stuff for me. I'm like, but it's not about that. It's never been about
Yeah.
that. So
Well, it's just a final thought on that. Thanks for your transparency there. I've
yeah,
just nice to hear those comments. Um, I may be off on this, but I think people also respond to the fact that we are not copycats. We're not following trends necessarily. We're not mimicking or parroting the latest flavor of the month with whatever you're supposed to do. I take pride in the fact that, I watch your stuff and I watch a couple other things, but for the most part, I'm just doing it the way I want to do it. I'm a completely unique, original person. And some people are confused by that, like, what is this all about? But most people are like, okay, this is different. I kind of like it. Like this guy is really just kind of doing his own thing. And that I think it even speaks to the business people. It's kind of an independent entrepreneur thing. And I'm not, again, afraid of the money thing, but the spirit of just kind of pushing myself and learning how to do new things as you have done as well, I think that's inspiring to some people. Like this
yeah.
person's not just finding a formula and just doing it over and over and over again. In a way, it's like being a musician or something. You're just constantly pushing to the next
Yeah, well,
period in your
it's
career.
authenticity, right? It's just,
Yeah.
and I too realized like I don't want sponsorships or the Patreon accounts and stuff. Like if people want to donate, great, like that, thank you, but it's not required. And I want to
Yeah.
pursue the things I want to do. I've had people say, "Hey, I
Yes.
want you to, I'll pay you to come to this place and do videos on this thing." And I'm like, "Wow, that would be the money would be nice," but I'm like, I don't really want to go there, or whatever
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that. So for now, I think you and I have both figured out these niches where we can coexist, and there's other people doing it as well. That we're providing something to the public, we're communicating with the public, and we're doing it on our terms and in the way we want to. And that's, I mean, right now that's sustaining me, and that feels right. And if that ever changes, then maybe something changes. And I think you probably feel the same.
I do. Well, you're
Yeah.
doing a great job.
Yeah.
You know that. but it's nice to hear it every once in a while. And I'm
Oh,
sure you hear
thanks.
it a lot virtually, but you're doing a great job. Keep going.
Yeah, it's still, just figuring it out as I go, making it up. So, well, great. That was a great conversation, Nick, and I did focus on you. I'd have no idea what was happening on the live chat, and I
Same here.
followed your advice there. But let's see. It looks like I've got some questions from Amanda Joe, and I know we won't be able to get to all of these. And we can do these maybe pretty quickly, Nick. There's maybe 8 or 10 questions on this first page, and I told her to send 2 pages. So let's kind of go rapid fire. So the first
Sure.
question, and I'll just read them rather than pull them up on the screen. I don't think that's beneficial. So from JMS, for both of us, it says, please discuss clickbait YouTube videos with questionable science content. I'll
Uh,
let you go
there's
first.
it's on purpose that I don't go looking at a bunch of other people's stuff because quite often it's disturbing to me, quite frankly. So I think Shawn has stronger feelings than I do on this, but my coping mechanism to lots of clickbait type things that are pseudoscientific and purposely misleading, my coping mechanism is just to ignore it. And I know that that's probably not the best thing to do for the greater good, but I'm back to thinking about keeping my engine going. That
Yeah.
just dismantles any positive energy. If I know that I'm doing something and I'm reaching 1,000 people live, and then I see some of these where there's 7.5 million views, it's like, why even bother? So I just pretend it doesn't exist. Shawn?
I agree. I try to do that, and I'm getting better because when you go to the place mentally where you give that some of your bandwidth and focus, it takes the wind out of your sails. So
Yeah.
there's all sorts of pseudoscience stuff out there, and it hurts me because I can see through it. I have the knowledge to be like, okay, they're off their rocker, but I know that they're sprinkling in enough science and making it sexy that it's misleading to the public. And that doesn't mean that the public isn't smart enough, but they're seeing stuff that if it looks like a duck and it talks like a duck, right? Or whatever the phrase is. And so they're thinking it's legit science. And I could mention several channels now, but I won't. Yeah. So I ignore it too. I guess I'm aware of it. I do check it out from time to time. Whenever someone comments something about it or if they post a link to it, I delete it because it's my channel and I feel like I have the right to dictate what is there. Um, I think it's messy and probably a bigger topic we could discuss at some other time if we wanted to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my approach too. So
Thank you.
okay, here's something a little lighter. So I like this from Eminem for both of us. What are our favorite geology movies? And they mentioned a few like Dante's Peak, Volcano, San Andreas, etc. So I'll let you go first on that one.
I'm going to have a disappointing answer. I didn't go to any of those movies because I kept hearing about all this crazy stuff, and I view it the same way that we just talked about with the last question. It's just bothering. It's just bothersome to me. So, like, a river runs through it or something is about as pure and as beautiful a film as I can think of immediately. That to me is what geology is about. But these other things that you just mentioned, those titles, I didn't even watch.
So you've
So,
never seen like a pop
no.
culture science disaster type movie from the 70s, 80s, 90s or any era? Like none? Like
It's not my genre anyway. Well, give
okay.
me a couple from the 70s or 80s. Maybe I watched them.
There was a movie. Oh shoot, I used to have a whole list. So I have a teach a disasters class, and that was one of the assignments I had the students do is to
Oh,
watch one of
really?
these movies and then critique it scientifically, like what's wrong and why. Like why did they, So there's shoot, what are some from the 70s, 80s? There's
Well, like,
Twister. I mean, there's Dante's Peak,
yeah.
Volcano. There was one with Sean Connery called Meteor from the 70s. I think it was 76. I mean, some of these are obscure. Like these aren't like Oscar winners, right? But
Right.
okay.
No, yeah, for whatever reason, yeah, for a while
Interesting.
there, what was the core and Dante's Peak and a few others in the 90s, I think, or
Yeah.
whatever. I just like,
They go through
God.
cycles, I think, of, yeah. Someone
I
mentioned, I saw When Time Ran Out. That was one from the 70s. Paul Newman was in that one. Um, yeah, I'll answer, I guess. I think Dante's Peak they actually hired a USGS consultant on the set. So even though there's things wrong about that movie, like it shows it erupting fluid Pohoihoi lava and ash simultaneously, there's things wrong with that. At least they like tried a little bit. The movie Volcano is awful. Like there's some that are just awful, and we actually got together sometimes in grad school, me and some buddies, and we'd throw one on. People just chilling out at someone's house, and it was comedy. We were watching it as if it was like an SNL skit or something. So interesting. That's an
well,
interesting fact about you.
yeah,
Yeah, just no interest. Interesting. Okay, well, much respect there.
thank
All
you.
right, Oscar M wants to know for both of us, what is the most controversial geology discussion today? I'm drawing a blank, so if you have something, go.
Well, I mean, discussion is the key word. Like, is it really a discussion or is it just shouting back and forth? So,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, my whole career, I've had students come up to me after the first lecture in 101 and say, listen, I need to pull you aside. I need to tell you, I don't believe that the Earth is 4.6 billion years ago. And I said, okay, well, thanks for not interrupting the lecture. Let's go back to my office and talk about it. It's not a discussion.
yeah,
It's not a discussion.
right.
To have a discussion, you need two open people who are willing to listen to the other people. Um, so Oscar, I don't know, age of the Earth,
Yeah, there's
our
hot button
columns.
topics, right? There's hot button topics in geology, for sure.
So that's where my mind goes. Where does your mind go when Oscar asks about a
I mean, I was thinking more
controversial?
like, what caused basin and range extension, some of the deeper stuff,
Oh, yeah,
but your point's a good one is that definitely teaching classes, age of the earth, um, and even somewhat like processes, and I just tell students straight up, like, you took a geology class, if this class's content infringes upon your belief system, that's for you to reconcile. um, Science is not about belief systems, it's about what we can observe and our understanding
yeah.
of the natural plant, earth and nature, and I don't know. So yeah, hopefully, Oscar, maybe that helped a little bit, but I don't know.
Well, you studied with Paul Umhofer, and Paul Umhofer was deep into the Baja BC world. And so
Yeah,
there's an example where it should be a conversation among every geologist in the American West. But again, if we're taking a dark version of it, most are not following any other discussions if it doesn't involve their research. And so even something as stimulating as did a piece of Mexico end up in the Pacific Northwest, you'd think everybody would want to chime in on something like that. But those kinds of open discussions are rare. It takes trust and a
right.
willingness to have a three-dimensional conversation, and most are too busy to do that.
Yeah, and just last thing, we don't need to spend too much time on it, but we feel like we've progressed as scientists, like the days of J. Harlan Bretz and that resistance to those observations and that interpretation. Like we think in 100 years we're in a better place, but we're not. Like we're still. It's probably getting better. I'd like to think so, but there's still people entrenched in you know, um, their conclusions, what their interpretation of the data is, and until we get out of those silos and start mixing, it kind of stays that way. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
good question, Oscar. It probably wasn't a good answer, but we tried there. Helen the Scottish Llama, that's a great little title there, wants to know, can you see any citizen science projects in geology, or do you believe they will mainly be of use in ecology biology? Um, Not sure what she refers to by citizen science projects in geology. Any thoughts there?
Well,
Or?
sure, I think I know what she's talking about
Okay.
or he's talking about. This past winter, I did a series of live streams and I decided I was going to try to lean on the viewers for all sorts of independent research by them,
Hmm.
mostly looking for historical documents and old photos and even finding papers that we didn't know about. And that to me is citizen science, that we've got folks who are engaged by what we're doing and just continuing to just kind of thinking about those things and doing their own work. And if there's not a forum for it, they just send us stuff or they do their own field trip or something like that. So that's how I view citizen science. And sure, almost anything that Shawn is talking about, there's plenty of talent out there, as you well know, Shawn. And to me, that's a current interest of how I can continue to not only have live viewers absorbing what I'm interested in, but how I can engage them and have them be part of a living community. That hasn't been done much before. And it was an experiment this past winter, and I think it worked quite well.
Yeah, no, I think I get. Thanks for explaining it better. I just didn't get the question right away. And now that you've explained it and thinking about it, my dad, who's retired, lives on Whidbey Island. He's in Oak Harbor, and he is a volunteer citizen scientist with some. It's affiliated with the university, but he goes out to the beaches because he likes doing that with his wife and walking the beaches. But they actually collect data about like where the tide and like where
Yeah.
the set after a storm has the sediment been eroded and the bare rocks exposed and erosion, and he just like he has his little check sheet that he like, and he's just making observations. So I think citizen science for observations has definitely gotten better and is improving a lot as well, just having those people looking at something, because the more eyes are on something, the more data you have.
Well, it's right back to the themes we were talking about an hour ago. Do you respect the people that are out there?
Right.
Oh, they don't have a master's degree in geology? They don't? Well, then they obviously are of
They're
no
not
use to
qualified,
us.
right? Yeah.
Come on, man, get over yourself. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? There's smart people who have they are engaged. Somebody has lit a fire under them and they want to go. And
Yep.
they've got, we got a lot of old people with time and money. They're willing to help out. They want to help
Right.
out. So let's figure out how we can get that citizen engagement and propel the science as opposed to just talking to everybody like they're third graders.
Yeah, I mean that might be, and I'm sure some people have figured that out, but that might be the next venture in like the science public thing, is like getting the researchers and the public, and the common denominator is the data, right? Like, hey, we need lots of data points on this glacier or this stream or whatever it is, and you've got people in that community that can go out and collect, and then they have that purpose, and then they're feeling like they're contributing, and it's win-win, right?
It
So
is.
yeah. No, thanks for that question. Let's see. I'm kind of picking and choosing a little bit here. There's a couple from about Iceland that I think I can handle some other time. Um, yeah, someone asking about if we know a geologist YouTubing in Southern Illinois or the Ozarks. I don't know anyone. That's from Charles W. Let's go to the next page of questions real quick here. And thanks for sticking around with this, Nick. Much appreciated.
This is fun. Thanks for the invite.
Yep. We'll go just a little bit further and then we'll wrap this up. Um, yeah, a lot of them are just asking like some basic geology questions. I'd like to kind of stick with the theme we're on here. Here we go from Wadoid. So basically, what can I do with a geology degree that can make me a living, not including being a teacher? Nick Zentner, you're on.
Well, young person, you're interested in geology. Okay, well, let me give you the spiel then. There are all these opportunities for you. Here is a website, young person. All the graduates of our program, and I've had them contact me and describe in a couple of paragraphs what their job is. And you will notice, young person, if you take the time to go to that website, that there's people working in an urban environment. They're making way more money than I am. They're driving in rush hour traffic every day. They're doing groundwater consulting. They're doing slope stability. They're working for Department of Transportation or they're at a private firm, and they're happy doing that. And they're happy doing that with getting a basic geology degree from this university, either a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. But we have our geology degrees as broad as possible so that you can go all those directions. If that doesn't sound good to you, then yeah, you can have a completely different lifestyle. And you're out in the middle of God knows where in Wyoming, and you're making a geologic map and you're mapping quad after quad, or now you're looking for important resources that have been overlooked for 150 years. That person who's living in a tent got the same training as that person in Tigard, Oregon, driving in their Porsche every day. So that's examples of how you can go different directions. My brother-in-law and I both went to Idaho State University, both got master's degrees at the same time, both, okay, so we both married two girls from the same family. Okay, great. He went back home in Cincinnati, did the suburban lifestyle, quite wealthy, consultant. I chose teaching. We took the same classes. We both did a master's thesis on the Snake River Plain. Those are the possibilities. You just have to be open and willing to go in all those directions, and all those jobs are available. I'd tell you, if it's art history and there's no jobs, I would tell you there's no work out there. There's tons of work, but you just have to have faith that it's going to happen for you. Now let's go out there and get them, okay?
Woohoo! There's the rally speech right there. I can't even add much to that. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of pathways. I always like to start with students that are asking this question, like, what are your goals in life? Oh, you want to live in Twin Falls, Idaho till you die? Okay, like here, how many geologists live in this, 50-mile radius area? Like there's 3 of us, right? It's slim pickings, How much is money an important goal in your life? Like, do you want to have a very affluent lifestyle? Okay, let's have that conversation. What do you want to do? I really think everything comes down to like, in terms of just happiness, it's like your job satisfaction. If you enjoy what you do, if you're comfortable with the wage and the compensation that you're given, if you like your lifestyle and the location that you're in, like I like living here. And then the other thing is your environment, your work environment. So who you work with, maybe your higher ups, if there are any, that sort of thing. If those 4 things are pretty much satisfactory, people really enjoy their careers. But when one of those things is out of whack, that's when people start looking elsewhere.
I totally agree with that. And I think in addition, it's a revelation that you can have a job that's also something you would be doing on your own time. Like it's basically your hobby, and yet you're also being paid to do it. That seems to not work for most people's brains. And I don't know about you, Shawn, but I get a lot of regret from viewers, whether it's by email or in the live chat, even like, boy, if I had figured or if I had discovered this geology thing long ago, why didn't I just go in that direction? Like I spent 40 years doing that and I hated it and I could have done this job. These guys seem to be having a great time doing all this stuff out in the middle of nowhere. And so if that's a goal to like have a job that's also something you would do anyway, it works in our cases for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's and you can't live your life looking back like that. And I tell people too with geology, I'm like, geology can be an amazing career and profession. It can also just be a fun hobby, right? Like I'm going to go outside, I'm going to learn on my own, I'm going to collect rocks or do whatever. And sometimes I had to advise students, like, it sounds like the things you want out of life and this geology degree might not be that compatible. That you might need to pursue this more as a hobby. But yeah, I hear from the same viewers that they wish, but the nice thing is they can do it now, right? They can come in now. We'll take you from at whatever age, wherever you're at, knowledge wise, and just start learning and be curious. I think that's the most important thing. So there's all sorts of pathways that you can follow there. So hopefully that was good. That was I lost the question there. Wadoid. Keith Dowsett, have you guys realized you already formed your own Department of Online Geological Outreach? I guess so. I mean, like I was lucky enough to see you, Nick, already kind of like trailblazing that path ahead of me, and knowing I had a passion for public outreach and doing the same sort of thing, but realizing I didn't want to do I don't want to be Nick Zentner, and you probably don't want me to be Nick Zentner anyway, but I could do something else on my own. And I contacted you early on. I don't know if you remember that email from many years ago where I was trying to get my name out a little bit and get some clout, but I didn't want you to feel like I was stepping on your toes. But I saw a world where we could both coexist, and now there's Myron Cook and there's other people out there doing great things. And I think the niche is there, and I don't think it needs to be under one domain or one person. I think. Go ahead.
It doesn't. You've done a beautiful job, and yes, many, many more could be doing this, but I don't think that's happening, maybe for a few reasons. I think I tried to say this an hour ago. Let me try again right now. What do you need, in my opinion, after doing this for a few years now? I think you have to be productive. I don't think you can do this for like 6 months and make a bunch of stuff and then go, well, I can put that on my resume, like I'm on to the next little challenge. No. Are you in this or not? And if you're in this, you keep yourself fresh, but you are in it for the long term, and it is part of you. So that's a big part of it. These other things we were talking about, the tone has to be right and such, but also just that I've been kind of negative about where I work, and I don't mean that to be the lasting message. I have been given this freedom, this academic freedom, to pursue my interests. So it's possible to pursue what interests me because of this job that I have. So, I go home sometimes and whine to my wife, and she says, you can't expect just to go off and do all your own stuff and then expect everybody to give you a standing ovation every time you walk into the building. What are you doing? Wake up.
Yeah.
And she's right. And so are there other people who have our jobs, or can it be done by a total amateur person to the point where you can have the credibility and all these things that we're doing? I don't know. But yeah, the list is pretty short, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's the two of us. It's Myron and maybe Callan Bentley a little bit on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And where are the women? Where are the minorities? There could be so many more voices out there. But I guess you need a certain.
Well, it's not easy. Like what are we doing right now, Nick? It's Sunday morning. Then what was I doing yesterday? I was at breakfast with some friends, and then I came right to the office to do a live stream on Iceland. And again, not for obligation, because I wanted to. I'm like, oh, Iceland's erupting. That's exciting. I want to be a part of that. I want to share that with people. And so and if you and I had oil and gas jobs in industry, I don't know if I would have the interest, the bandwidth, the time, the energy, the motivation
right,
to do this. But we, in the academic world, there is a lot of flexibility. You teach your classes, you're there for your student. And because you and I are not tenure track research professors, it's like, well, what else can I do? And for us, I think this has been the low-hanging fruit we pursued.
It's a good point. I don't think it's an accident we're both past. Well, I don't know. I'm 61. How old are you, Shawn?
51.
51.
Mm-hmm.
So we've raised our kids. We've gone through that phase. I started doing all this stuff because my kids didn't want to hang out with me anymore, and I was like, "What else? What else am I going to do?" I was a full-time parent for a good 15 years, and then suddenly I got to find something else.
Right.
And so I was looking for a new challenge. And that's a big part of this. So it's easy to say, where's the 31-year-old? Why aren't they doing all this? Well, they're trying to build a career. They're trying to maintain this
they're in
job.
survival mode. Like at 31, I was like, I got to do my job, but my wife needs me for this, and my kids need me for that, and I think there's a sweet spot in your life where it works better than other times.
And we were not only busy with parenting and our day job, but our day job was practicing talking, mastering, but having practice in communicating geology. And that word business is, I think, underappreciated, or maybe not recognized. And I try not to ever talk about what I'm doing on my channel. This is rare for me to comment on all this stuff, but I think the ability for us to just use our words and do it effortlessly, that only really comes from 20 plus years of daily practice to just kind
Yeah.
of just
You got to get
make
the
it
reps in. You
happen.
got to get the
Yeah.
reps in for sure.
Like
So,
it, like anything. Yeah.
yeah. So, well, if we are an E department of online geologic outreach, then that's great. I'll let Nick be the department head. I don't want to do that. So, here's a question from Charlie Mitchell. I guess it's for both of us. Do you have plans for outreach geared to younger people, high school and junior high? I'll start. When I started mine, I thought about doing something for kids, and now I see there's actually a geologist. He's on the East Coast, maybe Boston University or somewhere in that region, that has I think it's like, what's it called? Like all rocks have stories. There's a name for it, and he's doing something
Hmm.
geared for kids, and he's doing great work. So I don't have any plans for. I think what I do, and I think what you do, is accessible and should be accessible to adolescents. There's no age requirement here. Our communication styles maybe don't fit well with the 8-year-olds right now, but I've had viewers tell me, yeah, my I'm watching this with my 13-year-old. I have people coming to my field trip with their teenage kids, so I know it can work. What are your thoughts?
It's back to the Tom Foster collaboration where Tom was trying to play by the rules and make just the perfect video for a certain audience. And it goes back to that for me. So this is 15 years ago. I'm just like, I just want to make stuff that pleases me. And if it's out there and it's
Yeah,
free and open to anybody, then anybody can use it. And yes, I've heard from 5 year olds all the way up to 95 year olds. They're really into what's going on. If it's done well, it will work
right.
for all the audiences. So I don't think of I need to make videos specifically. Even the 2 minute thing where I said hello young people, I wasn't really thinking about I was doing this for elementary school people. I just thought it was kind of a
Yeah,
dorky way to start.
yeah. No, I agree. It's you pick your bandwidth in your message, you put it out there, and it sticks where it sticks. And
Put it out there.
yeah, and it just lands where it lands. So, okay, a couple more questions. We'll wrap this up here soon. JMS wants to know, please discuss the role of social media in teaching geology, like this chat or Discord or similar sites. I don't have any experience with Discord. Someone invited me onto I guess it's where you chat about a certain theme. I haven't actually gone on to that. Social media, I mean, YouTube is social media, so I think you and I are using that as our primary platform. But as I've gotten busier here, I used the Facebook a lot more early when I was trying to promote things, and now that I'm staying this busy, I'm not doing as much on any other channels. I know you still occasionally put out a Facebook like, "Hey, here's a new video," but what are your thoughts about that question or that topic?
I'm a user of social media personally. I'm on Twitter or X, as it's now called, and Instagram and Facebook. Um, I am not making any stuff specifically for those forums. Yeah, I still, if I make a video that I like, I'll include the link on those three channels just to kind of let people know what's going on. But it's the same philosophy. It's mainly YouTube that I'm operating in, and then if it's shared and spread, and it's free and open for anybody to enjoy. For me personally, nothing's copywritten or anything. It's like you want to take what I've done and use it somehow,
Yeah,
by all means. And
yeah,
it's I've never had a problem with anybody totally manipulating what I've done. So yeah, social media. I've not been on Discord either. I refuse to try Tinder. That's a whole. Sorry, not well
Tinder.
Tinder
I'm
and
telling Liz.
meant to
No,
say TikTok,
you
but
meant
we got to
Twitter.
edit that part out.
You meant Twitter, which
Um,
is now X, right?
no, I meant TikTok.
Oh, TikTok. Yeah, yeah. I don't do
But
anything
maybe
on
I
those
should look
either.
into Tinder. That gives me an idea. I'm always forward looking. I'm going to try something on Tinder. Everybody, okay? I am announcing that right now. Swiping right to the next.
Stay,
Okay.
stay tuned. Oh my gosh, that would be great. Yeah. Who's this geology guy on Tinder? I'm matching with him.
Woo.
He's kind of good looking. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see, like 10 years from now, will this still be a dominant platform or will we be on something else? So, if you and I are going to keep doing this, we're going to have to evolve like we have and find some other platform. So we'll just have to see.
It's a good point. I look forward to that.
Yeah,
For sure, there'll be new things coming. And, I'm not a young person, but it's another thing. I'm relying on the live audience to help me navigate these new things. And I'm continuing to just kind of plod along and teach myself things. So yes, it's easy to say that 5, 10 years from now, there'll be a whole new operation.
right.
I hope we're part of that too. That'll be a fun challenge.
Yeah, because you have to kind of adapt it. And you've been good about like, okay, I don't know how this, even just a few months ago, you didn't know how Zoom worked. I
Right.
think I saw you test your very first or nearly your first new Zoom thing, but you figured it out. You just need,
Yeah.
someone to kind of work through it, trial and error. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's do maybe a cut. Let's see. Let me cherry pick maybe two or three of these questions. Do you think, this is from Kate Batt, do you think the public has a general hunger for lifelong learning that isn't being met by the established education outlets? Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
I was going to
Go,
jump in
go.
before you and say yes, but go. I
You,
mean, we agree. Go ahead.
I mean, come on, man. Universities forever have had continuing education offices. They're terrible. They're terrible.
Yeah,
Every place I've been, like I've not seen any effective programs that are tapping into all this interest. Senior ventures, elder hostels, all that sort of thing. There are models that are out there, but yeah, if we really are talking about somebody who has an engine and has some scientific background and can easily see how to take what we're doing here and make it into much, much bigger thing, that potential is there. I'm not the person to do that. I have no interest in that. But for sure,
yeah,
if you are a business type person, this is right there waiting for you. Millions of people would love to take advantage of these opportunities if it's done right. So I don't know who that person is, but that would be the place to really expand this sort of thing.
yeah. I agree. The demand far exceeds what's currently offered in terms of supply. Like, it's better. We're in a better place than we've ever been with science in the public. There's science shows and programs and networks. It's better than it's ever been, but it's still so far behind what the demand is. And I think whether it's a business kind of corporate model or it's more like nonprofit kind of places doing it, but it's wide open. The options are there. The arena is open, and someone just needs to kind of fill it, I suppose. So, yeah, great question, Kate. Um, Squid Lee, for both or either of you, do you have a roadmap for someone at a university that doesn't have this kind of public outreach, but maybe they'd like to build it? How would they start? Well, that kind of just it dovetails into what we were just talking about, I think.
Say that one
Just,
again. They're at a university.
do you have a roadmap for someone at a university that doesn't have this kind of public outreach, but maybe they'd like to build it? How would they start? So I think he's saying, give me the seed to build a public outreach thing. And I think they're asking someone at a university. So someone in our kind of situation,
Okay.
and no one else is doing something like that.
All right. Well, let me try another little pep talk here, Shawn. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
All
going to
right.
talk to this person.
Rally
Okay.
speech
So,
number 2. Here we go.
sir or madam at a university, let's say that you are at a large university and you are just starting your career there. Congratulations on your job. And you want to create some sort of public outreach initiative at your university. I applaud you. And if I can help you, you let me know. But I think it's going to be tough sledding because you're going to be so busy at your university with your day job, quote unquote, that it's going to take a good decade to navigate that world, to get yourself practiced up with communicating I'll just assume it's geology, but maybe it's not. And then, more importantly, do you have allies at your university who will be willing and able to allow you to go in this direction? Because as we said at the beginning of this interview, this is a rigid dinosaur of a higher education world. And any sort of brand new idea is immediately viewed as threatening. It's scary. What is this person talking about? I don't know anybody at Stanford who does this, so absolutely not. Whatever you're talking about, I don't even know what it is. Don't do it. It doesn't even compute to me as an administrator. So that, I think, is what's maybe in your future. But if you have a couple of people who are in positions of authority at your university and they see your talent and they want to help you go in that direction, you can be way more effective than we are here. It just takes the right ability to kind of see that path and operate within the university system. But it's not going to be easy. You'd have to forge your own way, kind of like we have.
And I would say it doesn't even have to be affiliated with the school. I was kind of careful early on. If you look at most of my videos, I hardly ever say College of Southern Idaho. I tried to set that boundary early on because the university could get cold feet about some faculty member, staff member that has a social media platform. Who knows what they're yapping about, if they represent the views of the college or not. I mean, we actually have a division now at our school that like if the TV station wants to interview me, I have to call this person that comes and like, well, what's the topic?
Oh, wow.
And they're not like censoring me or anything, but they just want to know.
Right.
And it's actually been okay. It hasn't been, but it's different than it used to be. And so I would say, one, do you even need to be affiliated with the university to do your public outreach? And then two, my advice would be just to start small. Like you started with downtown lectures. Like you didn't start with, and it didn't exist, so it's a little bit different now, but you didn't start with Nick Zentner YouTube world. And the same with me. Like it was little things. It was going to the Rotary Club and doing presentations and leading field trips for the museum and then doing little things in the community. So it went from very local to kind of regional and then to this level. And so I would encourage someone to kind of start small like that too.
Well, this is a current interest of mine, so I appreciate the question from the young person at the university. Let me try to add to that. Yes, for quite some time, especially during the pandemic, it was totally separate from the university. Great, all right. But since we've come out of COVID, in the last 2 years, have been trying. That's kind of why I'm dark today, because it's like battling. Like, look, I've got a big audience. They are generous people. They know what's going on in this program. They're seeing these live seminars that we're doing on Friday mornings. Mm-hmm. I want to now try to take the university that I work at and this YouTube world that I have nurtured and make them work together. And it's not been easy because people in my department are either threatened or like, or I've never seen what you're doing. It's like, I work in your department, man. You haven't watched one freaking thing that I do. But we're starting slowly to actually get support for our students from my YouTube people.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And so it's.
Did you feel like that's greasing the skids from the higher ups that like, whoa, this, like it's getting easier, or you still feel like it's tough sledding where you're at?
It's slowly getting better. The university president is a big fan of this, and so that doesn't hurt. But it's even just marketing. I mean, our university is hurting. The enrollments are down. It's not just us. This is coming out of COVID. Universities are struggling. Some are even closing departments and so on. Yeah. And yet somehow the geology department at our university is like, what's going on? They've got all sorts of money coming in and new majors. Yeah. Like, that's a weird one. I wonder, why is that? And everybody else is struggling.
Yeah, you guys are bucking the trend. Yeah.
They can't even see it, man. They can't even see it. You mentioned, so yeah, even recruiting, instead of sending a flyer to some high school or having a group come up from Moxie to visit the campus, this is a new way to advertise. Like, come here. That's the hallway you'd be in. This is the chair you'd be sitting in.
Yeah.
That's another kind of new thing that is not just separate from my day job, but somehow trying to incorporate it. So we've got a couple of young faculty that I'm huge fans of because they can see
They see the
how
connection. Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
They do. So I'm just leaning into them big time.
No, and I think, yeah, that might be the future. And you're again kind of like ahead of the curve a little bit, not to give you too much gloss there, but I'm kind of, I think, behind in that sense, in that like the college is just now starting to see like, oh, like he's got a lot of people watching him, and this has all happened pretty recently. And I have students taking my online classes that are back east; they're not even here, and like,
Oh,
why is this
really?
person even taking Shawn Willsey's class? Like, well, I like how he teaches, and I can't be there. And some of these people have donated to the college, so I think whatever you do, I'll be paying close attention because I'm sort of behind you with my
Hmm.
school. It'll be interesting to see where it goes, I guess is maybe a good way to put it. So,
Well, it's one of those things that it doesn't happen overnight, but if you just keep pushing and keep trying a couple of new things, like most places, before you know it, then everybody's thinking, "Oh yeah, that's how we're in." Yeah, oh yeah,
right,
don't you know about our department? We got this great YouTube thing. Well, you just kind of get to that threshold, and
right.
as soon as you cross the threshold, then it's good. So yeah, it's a frontier for, I think, higher education in general. This is maybe something
Yeah.
people will want to emulate.
No, no, I appreciate that. Thanks. Um, well, I think there's a couple last questions here, but I think I want to be respectful of your time and just thank you for being with us here today, Nick. It was great. Just like a lot of things I do in life, whether it's a presentation at the Rotary Club or whatever, I have in my head a script of how things are going to go, and it doesn't go that way, but it's better. Like, so whatever, so this organic discussion I think went much better. You're obviously an easy guest because you've done this so much. You know, it wasn't like dragging responses out of you. So, but thanks for your time. Thanks for your frank discussions about all these topics related to outreach and all the great things you're doing. And I'll be watching, of course. I think we're kind of watching each other and working together. And I'd love to continue working with you however we can in the future. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for the invitation, Shawn. It's been a real pleasure to be with you today. You're doing great things, and I really know that you've got a lot of loyal followers who are with us right now. So thanks to everybody at home for being part of this today.
Well, great. Thanks so much, Nick. I'm going to go ahead and shut the Zoom down, but you're welcome to watch the last little bit. So thanks again.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Bye
appreciate it.
bye.
Bye, everyone.
See you, buddy.